Before the drawings, before the rituals, before the man who walks the town like a ghost, there was a little boy, 7 years old, alone, and the sun was about to go down. Victor didn't understand fear the way adults do. Adults fear what they know. Children, they fear what they imagine. And that first night, imagination was all he had. He waited for his mother to come back. He waited for Eloise to return. He waited in the shadows, stretched long across the cellar floor. And when the scratching started outside, he did what children do. He hid, he hummed, he drew circles on the dirt with his fingers because circles felt safe. Circles felt like something he could finish. Welcome back to Victor, The Lost Years, the story behind the story, the 40 years the show never shows us. Tonight, we began at the only place we can begin, the first night Victor was ever alone. Not the night he became a survivor, not the night he became a ghost, but the night he was still just a little boy, waiting for his mother to come back. Take a breath, settle in, and imagine the world through the eyes of a 7-year-old child as the sun goes down. The root cellar was never meant to be a bedroom. It was a place for jars and potatoes and the kind of quiet that adults call storage. But children call it scary. But that night, it became Victor's whole world. The door had closed hours ago. His mother's footsteps had faded. Eloise's hand had slipped out of his, and the last bit of daylight had drained through the cracks in the wooden boards above him. Victor sat on the dirt floor, knees pulled to his chest, listening to the silence. Except it wasn't silence. Not really. There were sounds, soft ones, wrong ones, the kind of sounds that make a child hold their breath without knowing why. A shuffle, a scrape, a whisper that didn't belong to any voices he knew. Victor didn't understand fear the way adults do. See, adults fear what they know. Children fear what they imagine. And imagination was all he had. He whispered to himself, "Mommy's coming back." Because that's what children do. They repeat the last thing they want to believe. He waited and waited and waited, but the door never opened. So when the sun finally disappeared, the cellar changed. It wasn't just dark, it was alive. Shadows stretched across the walls like long fingers. The air felt heavier, like it was listening. Victor reached for the only thing he had, a small crayon, worn down to a stub. He didn't draw pictures, not yet. He drew circles, over and over in the dirt, on the wall, on the wooden beams beside him. Circles made sense. Circles had no corners for monsters to hide in. Circles felt like something he could finish. He hummed a tune, off-key and shaky, the kind of sound a child makes to keep themselves from crying. He didn't know the words. He didn't need to know them. The humming was a shield. But outside, something moved, slowly, deliberately, like it knew he was there. Victor froze, not because he understood danger, but because children instinctively know when something is wrong. He pressed his back against the wall. He held the crayon like a weapon, and he whispered Eloise's name, even though she was long gone. And then a voice, a human voice, not a monster's voice, just a sound, a soft, dragging breath right outside the cellar door. Victor didn't scream. He didn't run. He didn't even blink. He just drew another circle. Time doesn't move the same way for children. Minutes stretch, hours bend. Fear makes everything slow. Victor counted his breaths. He counted the cracks in the wall. He counted the circles he drew until he lost track. Every so often he whispered, "Mommy?" But the darkness never answered. At one point, he crawled to the door and pressed his ear against it. He heard nothing, and somehow that was worse. He imagined his mother's footsteps returning. He imagined Eloise opening the door and laughing, telling him it was all just a game. He imagined the town outside still alive, still warm, still safe. But imagination can only hold back reality for so long. Eventually, the cellar grew cold. Victor curled up on the floor, shivering. He pulled his shirt over his knees. He hugged himself the way his mother used to, and he waited for morning. When the first sliver of sunlight slipped through the cracks, Victor didn't move. He didn't trust it. He didn't know if the monsters slept, or hid, or changed with the dawn. But the light kept growing, and eventually, curiosity, that stubborn, childlike spark, pushed him to stand. He brushed dirt off of his hands. He picked up his crayon, and he walked to the door. His fingers trembled as he pushed it open. The world outside was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like holding your breath. Victor stepped out slowly, blinking against the brightness. The air smelled wrong. The houses looked wrong. The whole town felt empty. He didn't know it yet. He didn't know what happened. He didn't know that everyone was gone. He didn't know that he was the only child left in the place that had swallowed an entire community. All he knew was this: his mother wasn't there, Eloise wasn't there, and the world he stepped into was not the world he remembered. Victor took one step forward, then another, and just like that, the first night ended, and the lost years began. This was episode 1 of Victor, The Lost Years, the night everything changed, and the night a child became a survivor. In episode 2, we follow Victor into the town, into the aftermath, into the morning he discovered that everyone he knew was gone. So stay close, this is just the beginning.